Have you ever gone into Kroger or Giant Eagle or Lucky, some kind of food distribution center, and eaten the samples? I mean, there are some times where you can just have lunch at these places. You know, I'll get a meat sample here, and I'll get a cheese sample here, and I'll get a pickle sample and a bread sample. You know, and it's really kind of nice. And or sushi samples, and often when Susan and I do that, we'll say, "Oh, this little pickle is really good. Let's get the jar." And so we'll get the full jar. You know, these hot dogs are good. Let's get the full hot dog. Let's get all the sushi. You know, and so you get this little taste of what it's like, and then you look forward to having the whole thing. You know, sometimes when we go to a movie and we'll see the previews, we'll get just a little taste of the movie that's coming, and we'll say, "Oh, we've got to see that. We've got to see the whole movie." You might take a test drive in a car and really enjoy that, and you think, "Oh, I've got to get this car and have the full experience of this car." You know, this is what the text in 1 John is about, where we get a taste, we get a sample, and we look forward to the full thing, the whole thing. We get, as John says, we get a taste of what Christ is like, but then we shall see him face to face and have the complete experience of it. You know, the teaser isn't enough often. We want the full thing. This is called, in theology, eschatology. Aren't you glad you came today? Eschatology. It means the study of the end things, the study of end time, how things will end. And, you know, how will it end? How will our life end? How will time end? What happens, you know, when we die? The study of end things. Now, it's broken down into what's called realized eschatology and future eschatology. Realized eschatology is this glimpse. We get a glimpse of what it's like, but future eschatology is the full-blown thing. As John says, here and now we are God's children. So we get a glimpse of what it's like in the future. But then he goes on to say, but what we shall be has not yet been revealed, so we don't know. You ever had an experience of where something's really great and you wish it would last forever? Say you're at a wedding reception and you think, "Oh, it's ending. I wish it would last forever." You know, there's just a gorgeous day where there's not a cloud in the sky and the temperature is just perfect, and you think, "This has been a great day. I wish it could last forever." You listen to a sermon and you say, "This is a really good sermon. I wish it could last forever." You know, or a vacation, you know, "Oh, this time at the shore, this week has been fantastic. I wish it could last forever." That's this eschatology where we, you know, I have this glimpse of what it's like to be loved by God. I've had this experience, but I want it to last forever. Yeah. Have you ever wanted to be like somebody? Have you ever looked at somebody, gosh, I wish I could be like them. Yeah. I was brought up by a mother who frequently told me I should be like somebody else. You know, "Why can't you be like so-and-so? Why can't you be like him? Why can't you be like that?" I kind of had it with her when she said to me, when I was already married, and I was at a party with my 4-year-old nephew, and she said, "Why can't you be more like him?" And I thought, good grief, you know, this has got to stop. We often want to be like somebody. My first memory of wanting to be like somebody was I wanted to be like Roy Rogers. Yeah, I was 4 or 5. I wore the cowboy hat. If you want to be like somebody, you get to work and try to be like them and start to imitate them and acquire their habits. And so, I wore my cowboy hat. I wore my flannel shirt. I kind of wore a scarf, a bandana. I wore my Levi's, and I was 4 or 5, and I remember a July day when it must have been, 100 degrees, coming downstairs to go outside and play with my flannel shirt on and my bandana and my hat and my Levi's and my boots. And Mom said, "You're not wearing that. Put on a T-shirt and shorts." Bitter fight with my mother about, I've got to be Roy Rogers. Roy Rogers wouldn't be like that. And, but you reach a point when you want to be like somebody that you realize you really can't. You just don't have the stuff to be like them. I couldn't sing like Roy Rogers, so I could never be like Roy Rogers. I couldn't ride a horse, mainly because I didn't have a horse. My next role model I wanted to be like was Veda Pinson. Do any of you remember Veda Pinson? Okay, some old timers. Center fielder for the Reds. Yeah. I wanted to be like him. He was graceful, and he could hit well, and he could really run down balls. And it was just wonderful to watch him, and I wanted to be like him. And so I made Dad take me to the park, and he hit me fly balls that I'd try to catch. But I realized I was never going to be like Veda Pinson. I didn't have the stuff. I wasn't left-handed. I wasn't graceful. I wasn't coordinated. I didn't have the eye to judge a fly ball. I was always misjudging fly balls. And I just didn't have the stuff to be like him. Throughout my life, I've tried to be like other people that I admire, but there's always something where I don't have the material to be like them. I'd like to be like Jesus. I'd like to be like Jesus. There's much about Jesus that I envy. His poise, his ability to think quickly on his feet, his ability to respond so cleverly, his ability to focus, his authenticity and genuineness, his feeling like he's always where he should be. He's never out of place. He seems so secure in who he is, and I know that comes from his oneness with God. There's much I'd like to be like Jesus. I'd like to see like Jesus sees. When I look at people, I see rich or poor, or black or white, or young or old. I see all these marks, and that filters how I relate to people. I get the feeling Jesus didn't see people as either or, this or that. He saw people, and it enabled him to love everybody without preconceived notions, without prejudice. I'd like to be able to see people like Jesus does so that I can love them properly. And I'd like to feel like Jesus does. We talk about having our heart in things, and Jesus had his gut in things. I think Jesus felt things in his gut. He felt that compassion, and he felt that mercy, and he felt that desire to reach out to all people. And sometimes I don't have that feeling in my gut. I'd like to have that compassion. But I realize I don't have the stuff. I can try. I can get to work on it. I can, as John says, work on purifying myself as Christ is pure. But I don't have the stuff. And I know there's stuff that I've got that I'd like to get rid of. I'd like to get rid of my temper. I'd like to get rid of my anger. I'd like to get rid of my need to judge people. And I'd like to be purified of that, because Christ doesn't have that. And I know what a waste of time it is, and I know it doesn't do me any good. But try as I might, I just don't get there, to that authentic life. Sometimes I'd like to say when I do something and I lose my temper or get too sarcastic, I want to say, oh, that's not me. That's not me. But it is me. I did it. I have to take ownership for that. It is me, but I don't want it. Purify myself as Christ is pure. Yeah, I'd like that. God gets that. And God and John get that. Here and now we are God's children. What we shall be has not yet been revealed. But when he appears, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. There's this promise in this passage that the Christ we're trying to be like, it will happen. We shall be like him. This commitment to want to be like somebody becomes a promise and a hope where God says, you will be like him. Great stuff. The glimpse becomes full. What happens at the end time? What happens when we die? The Bible doesn't say a whole lot. It focuses much more on now. And the Bible, even when it talks about death and the end time, it sends kind of a mixed message. In some passages, you get the impression that when you die, you go immediately to be with God. When Jesus says on the cross, today you will be with me in paradise. That leads you to believe that it's an immediate transition. In other places, in 1 Thessalonians and in 1 Corinthians, Paul leads us to believe that when we die, we basically sleep and wait until the end time when all are resurrected to be with the Lord. That might matter a lot to some of us. It doesn't matter a lot to me. I sometimes look forward to the sleep. It doesn't matter a lot to me because if my life is in God's hands, whether it's immediate or it takes some time, it's in God's hands, and I trust that. But what the Bible does say is we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. If I was going to sum up what Christ was and what Christ is, I would say it's a person fully alive. We shall be like him, fully alive, fully authentic, fully genuine, fully loving, fully seeing, fully compassionate, fully forgiving, fully who we are. That stuff that I say, oh, that's not me, will be taken away. That stuff that makes me less than I'm meant to be will be purified. In a sense, as I become fully alive like Christ, I finally become fully me. Fully me. And as I become like Christ, I become fully John. Read an article in the People magazine. It must have been about 6 months old, in the doctor's office this week. And they were talking about role models. And Cary Grant, they interviewed Cary Grant. And who did he want to be like? And he said, I'd like to be like Cary Grant all the time. And he said, I'm not always Cary Grant. And I thought, yeah, I'd like to be John Keeny all the time. The John Keeny that God had in mind. We shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. We shall be fully alive as God wants us to be. So, All Saints' Day is about our loved ones. It's about those who have gone before us. It's about we as saints. It's a celebration that these glimpses we get of God's love and of being fully alive will become full and complete. For we shall see him as he is, and we shall be like him. It is so. Amen.